Alright, everybody, it's time to do my official top 10 horror movies of 1980. Now, first and foremost, let me get this right out of the way. This is a personal opinion. I'm not doing the top 10 best, top 10 personal favorites. Alright, and some of these are first time watches on this list, so maybe they would go up on a second viewing. So this list isn't permanent in the future. This list could change. This was a very hard list to make, and I'm sure all the other ones in the future will be too. And I'll be saying it again, like, man, this was tough because these things did change. They went up and down every single day. I was re-looking at my list, like, should that be there? I think it should go up. So yeah, this list is not going to stay this way forever, but nostalgia does play a hand in some of my decisions on this list. So yeah, some of these are higher because of nostalgia, and some of these are higher because they're genuinely good movies. Now, this is my personal opinion. If it doesn't line up with yours, who cares? It's just a list. Don't get offended and act like a troll in the comments. Grow up. Now, some of these movies you're going to say, well, I thought that came out in 79, or I thought that came out in 81 or 82. I'm going off of the release date on IMDb when it was first theatrically released in its country of origin. All right? If it's an Italian flick and it came out in Italy in 1980 but didn't hit America until 83, I don't care, it's 1980. So some of these movies are going to be like, well, I don't think that one counts. I don't care, it counts to me, and that's what matters. Now, in this video, I'm not only giving you a top 10, but I'm also basically giving you a top 25, because I'm going to give you 5 honorable mentions, but I'm also going to give you 10 what I call participation trophy awards out to movies that are worth a watch. They're not great, but they're also not bad. And this is the 21st century. We live in the day and age where everybody's a winner, so I figured why not give participation trophies to movies that aren't that great, but also not that shitty. And I'm giving you 5 dishonorable mentions to the 5 worst movies, up to 5. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. What is one of my 5 dishonorable mentions? We're going to go in order from shittiest to the least shitty of these 5 shitty movies. And the worst of them all, to me, the one that boiled my blood, was a Omen rip-off crappy film called The Godsend. This is basically a British version of The Omen. It has no suspense, no atmosphere, and no style. The kid they hire in this movie to be Damien basically is never scary, and all she does is give a stupid evil stare to the camera throughout the whole movie. You have this creepy pregnant chick who's Donald Pleasence's daughter who just drops off the baby and then just disappears, and that's never explained or explored in the film. This family keeps losing child after child, and you never see any impact that really has on this family. It doesn't break them apart. They never shed a tear, not that I can remember. It's just so fucking bad. There's no grief, there's no gut punch, there's no emotion in the film. It's completely soulless. It's just such piss poor writing on top of the piss poor performances. You got moronic parents who are too oblivious to see the truth. They witnessed the little evil bastard push their own biological daughter out a freaking building, and they still love the little bastard for no reason. Like, she's so charming, it's just blinding them. Bullshit. And on top of it all, it's just got this awful made-for-TV quality, and it just has nothing going for it at all. There's no resolution at the end of the film. Nothing is ever explained, or just no finale. It's an abomination. Fuck this stupid movie. Next up is the film that started Tom Hanks' career, and that is He Knows You're Alone. This is the first movie I believe that he was in, and we also got Paul Gleason in here from all kinds of movies, and they're both wasted. Barely in this film at all. It starts like a generic slasher movie, but then it's actually just a movie within the movie. It's kind of like the opening of Scream 2, and you think, oh, they're just poking fun at generic slashers, and they're going to deviate away from that and try to do something different, but they end up being the generic slasher that they show you in the opening themselves. You got a maskless killer in this movie with no intimidation factor at all. He's not scary, he's not interesting. I'm not engaged in the story at all. It's just trying to rip off Halloween, and it does it down to the T. You got escaped mental patient, you got doctor looking for him or somebody looking for him. It's just trying to rip off Halloween, and it does it so pathetically. Piss poor writing, awful kills, all off camera, no creativeness, no gore, hardly any nudity in the film, if not none. It's just another terrible slasher movie. Do not watch this one. Next up is a ultra low budget movie called Effects. This is a terrible transfer that I saw, and for a movie called Effects, I find it ironic that this movie has like no effects in it at all. You got Tom Savini as a character in the film, you got the guy from Day of the Dead, and this story was just, again, not engaging. I was bored to tears watching this movie. It has this whole like movie within a movie plot, like they're shooting a movie on set, but the director's like trying to make like a snuff film. He's like filming the cast and crew without them knowing, and it's just not executed well. I will say this movie's ahead of its time though. Like this movie's very meta. It's kind of like Scream. The whole movie within a movie thing, kind of like Scream 3. So it's got that going for it. It's kind of ahead of its time. But did I mention how boring it is? There's not a kill for 45 minutes, and the kills you do get are pretty lame. There's a forced, like, love relationship in the movie, and I can't stand that stuff. I can't stand it when it's, like, forced and you don't believe it. There's no chemistry. They, like, have the camera guy and gaffer fall in love, and it's just not natural, and you don't buy it for a minute. And even though it's, like, a very low-budget snuff film this guy's trying to make, he has, like, multiple, like, expensive cameras hidden throughout the woods filming these people without them knowing. But it's like, how can you not see all these cameras everywhere? They're huge, they're on tripods. This guy can't see all that shit. Give me a break. Next up is an Umberto Lenzi film called Nightmare City. The one thing I'll give this movie, it has good Italian like action music, and it does get very action-packed at times. It's very chaotic. And the zombies in this movie, if you can call them that, they're like zombie, vampire, cannibals. What the hell are they? They're running around. They're very unique. They're holding guns and knives and shit. So that's different. I'll give it that. But the effects in this movie are so damn low budget. Like there's not even an attempt to create actual like blood effects or like like squibs when people are getting shot. There's like people just falling to the ground with no bullet holes. It's just so low budget that it just hurt the film for me. And I can enjoy low budget films. I love Dry Blood. It's always my go-to example because that's very low budget and it's amazing. But this one was just so low budget that I just couldn't get into it. It's so bad. There's plenty of action in the first half, but unfortunately all the action choreography is not done well. But I did kind of like how this movie turned into Zombieland in the third act when they went to the amusement park, and then the unexpected happened when they're going into the helicopter. But then this movie gives you the middle finger and it says, oh, it's all dreams. It's all a dream or a premonition. It's like, fuck that cop-out ending. What the hell? It's just not a good film. Avoid it at all costs. And my final dishonorable mention will be Funeral Home, aka Cries of the Night. This movie's kind of basically a Psycho ripoff. It's borrowing a lot of things from Psycho. You got two actors from My Bloody Valentine, which I kind of liked seeing that. And this is the same director of Killer Party, a much better movie than this. The transfer that I saw for this was very, very abysmal. Like, I couldn't hardly see anything. It's got very bad pitch black like lighting. The cinematography is not good. The movie is just a snooze fest, man. It takes forever to get going. I did like seeing the guy from Meatballs. It's just got tropes in it. Like the whole, like, grandma's hiding a secret in her basement. What could it be? And you know exactly where the movie's heading. The third act is just not that much of a payoff at all when the grandma goes nuts and she's like doing things that are literally impossible. Then how could she be pulling that crap off? This movie even has the cliche, slow, mentally challenged character named Billy in overalls. It's like it's got all the typical cliches in it. All right, now let's jump into my top 10. What is my number 10? Number 10 will go to Lamberto Bava's Macabre. A middle-aged woman traumatized from the death of her lover moves into a room at a New Orleans boarding house where the blind landlord becomes suspicious to her activities of continuing her affair with her dead lover. This is a movie that I've seen twice now within recent months. I did not watch this one growing up, but let me tell you something. I love this movie because of how weird it is and how disgusting that it gets. This movie just had me laughing when I don't think it was intentionally supposed to be funny. I love that this movie says it's based on true events in New Orleans. I haven't looked into it, but based on what happens at the end of the movie, I'm going to call bullshit. This is not a true story. And I know I haven't said it yet, but there will be spoilers. All right, so Just keep that in mind. I love that this movie has kids killing kids. Like, we see a little girl drowning her own younger brother just for attention, I think. And then we get this awesome, like, Final Destination 2 and, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker opening with, like, the car crash and the thing, like, decapitating the guy, going through the windshield. Just lots of little cool gore effects in the movie. And where this movie goes in the third act, when you find out like what this chick's doing in her bedroom, it is just like, wow. The daughter is the best character. I love whoever the hell did the ADR for her, because she does not sound like a 12-year-old girl. She sounds like an adult voicing a little girl, and it's hilarious. This is a movie where the acting from the ADR people is so bad that it works to the film's benefit, because I just was eating it up. One thing I didn't really care for was like the jazzy Lethal Weapon score. They had like two different sounds that they played throughout the whole movie. One with like a harmonica and one that just sounded more jazzy. Like, I wasn't crazy about that. And the thing that really sealed this movie to be on my top 10 was the what the fuck ending. Something out of like Pieces. It's just an ending that sticks with you because it's just so crazy. It just goes for it. Alright, number 9 is a movie I just saw for the first time recently and reviewed because it was Christmas time, and that movie is Christmas Evil. A toy factory worker, mentally scarred as a child upon learning Santa Claus is not real, suffers a nervous breakdown after being belittled at work and embarks on a Yuletide killing spree. If you haven't checked out my review, I'll leave a link, hopefully, maybe here, so you can check that out, or just go to my page and look it up. So, what I really like about this movie is just the story overall, and this main actor especially. He just really sells it. Like, I really buy his insanity. He really believes he's Santa Claus. He is what makes this movie work for me. And I love how he's just spying on kids. He really thinks he's Santa. He's doing everything that Santa does. He's going down the chimney. The kills are like, holiday themed, like Christmas themed. He's using like tree ornament, like tree stars and stuff like that. Although the kills are goreless, I just like how the kills are done. There's no gore, but I like the creativeness of them. And this is 2 movies in a row where the ending just jumps the shark and says, fuck it, we're gonna do this now. Even though it doesn't make any sense, it goes from grounded in reality to, oh shit, now his van's a sleigh. Number 8 will go to a John Carpenter movie starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins, and that is The Fog. Reverend Malone stumbles upon a dark secret about the town's founding. Then a mysterious fog descends upon the village and people start to die. The things I love about this movie is John Carpenter's fantastic piano riff. I love the music and feel of the movie. I love that this movie opens up with like a classic campfire story being told, and this movie really just feels like a campfire story come to life. I love the whole history and mythos of the town, and the history, like what they did and how it's coming back to haunt them. And who could forget this amazing recognizable cast, all these familiar faces in other Carpenter flicks. You got Tom Atkins, you got Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh, you got Annie from Halloween, and Sheriff Brackett, just person after person. I love that stuff. The only thing wrong with this movie is that Tom Atkins shaved his mustache. Can't get over it. I can't stand that he shaved his mustache. And I find it very odd that everybody in this town seems to like Stevie Wayne's awful classical music that she's playing, and she keeps interrupting the broadcast like every 10 seconds. It's like, what is every song like 15 seconds long in this movie? I get it, it's a budget thing, but it makes me laugh. I thought the filming locations were beautiful. Like, this is the perfect setting for this movie. I love the lighthouse and just the town and the eerie fog atmosphere. Now, I love that Jamie Lee Curtis is in this movie, but I honestly feel like her character was thrown in just because her mom was in the movie too. Like, she just feels thrown in. She doesn't really serve too much of a purpose of the plot. Like, if you took her out of this movie, I don't think anything would change. This movie is also kind of leisurely paced. It's not the fastest paced movie, but I still enjoy it. One final critique. I don't understand why Stevie Wayne never leaves the radio station to go help her son. I guess it would just take forever to get there because of the 1,000 steps that she has to go up and down every day for work. Why doesn't she ever leave the lighthouse to go save her son? She's just screaming on the radio like, somebody go to my house, save my son. You can see it from the lighthouse. Why don't you just go and save him? All right, this is where people start throwing tomatoes at the screen because they're going to be like, what? This needs to be number one. But hear me out. I've only seen this movie a couple of times. I did not grow up on this movie, and that movie is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Jack Torrance accepts a caretaker job at the Overlook Hotel where he, along with his wife Wendy and their son Danny, must live isolated from the rest of the world for the winter. But they aren't prepared for the madness that lurks within. I really liked the score in this movie. Score is a thing that's just becoming more and more important as I get older. I've never focused on music in films as much growing up, but the score in this movie is very haunting. And this movie has just amazing atmosphere. I love the isolated setting, how there's just no one there to help them out. And the cinematography work, the macabre visuals, and just the eerie imagery within, the twins, just dad chopped to pieces on the ground, the blood coming out of the elevator, the chick in the bathtub, just the whole aesthetic of the film. I love the way this movie looks, the way it's shot. The tension in the third act of this film is just relentless. Once he's attacking his wife with the axe, it's just nonstop, like nail-biting tension from that moment on, because you don't know if they're going to make it out alive or not. Jack Nicholson's performance in this movie is fantastic. He's the best part of it, actor-wise, because Shelley Duvall, I'm not crazy about her performance. I mean, she's fine in some moments, but then there's other moments where it just doesn't work for me. And Dick Halloran, he's a bit of a pervert if you ask me. Did you see the posters on his wall? He's an odd character. Now, a reason why this movie just doesn't make it higher on my list is that it's not a very rewatchable movie for me. It's very long. It's not the best paced film. The first act, especially, like them getting set up, going to the hotel and all that stuff. It's more leisurely paced, and I just don't really care for the story overall. Like, it's kind of confusing to me, especially the ending. Like, this is a movie where when it ends, I'm just kind of scratching my head. And I don't really like watching movies where I just leave it going, huh? I don't understand. And shout out to Charlie Rashed. Shout out to you, buddy. This is the movie that he picked as his favorite movie of 1980. Number 6 goes to an Italian flick directed by the godfather of gore, Lucio Fulci, and that is City of the Living Dead. A psychic participates in a seance where she sees a vision of a priest hanging himself. New York City reporter Peter Bell investigates the seance and learns that the priest's suicide has somehow opened the portal to hell and must be sealed by All Saints' Day. This is a flick that's probably not going to be for everybody, but I really enjoyed it even more the second time around. Wasn't crazy too much. I wasn't that crazy the first time, but this went up on a second viewing. I love seeing Christopher George in here. I love some of the visuals and imagery in the film, like just seeing the priest hang himself in the cemetery. The atmosphere of this whole film is just spot on. I love the teleporting zombies, the way they look, and the fact that this guy can stare at people and make them throw up their own guts. It is just very gory at times. It's got a good, simplistic score. Unexpected deaths that surprise you, and that ridiculous scene with the coffin makes me laugh. It's also got a very intense final act that I thought was the most, atmospheric. I just love, when they go down there and, the caves or whatever, and all the zombies are coming out. All that stuff was just great. There's multiple characters and storylines going on, so it can be kind of hard to follow if you're not paying attention. And the very end makes no sense. It's kind of a what the fuck ending because the screen just starts to shatter. It's confusing, but then when you look into the reason why, it actually is kind of funny. All right, it's time for the Participation Trophy Award ceremony where I shout out up to 10 movies that are worth a view. Now, I'm not going to go into things that I like or don't like about these movies. I'm just going to shout them out real quick and give you a quick plot synopsis about each of them in case you don't know what they're about. So, here we go. Prom Night by Paul Lynch. This slasher movie follows a relentless killer who is out to avenge the death of a young girl who died after being bullied and teased by 4 of her classmates. Savage Island, aka Grim Reaper. Tourists take a boat to a remote island where they find that most of the people have disappeared and something is stalking them. They find a hidden room in the big mansion on a hill and an ancient diary, which gives them clues to the source of the terror. Mother's Day by Charles Kaufman. Three girls discover that two men are willing to do anything to impress Mother, and what impresses Mother is watching her sons commit acts of rape and murder. Cannibal Holocaust, directed by Ruggero Deodato. A New York University professor returns from a rescue mission to the Amazon rainforest with the footage shot by a lost team of documentary filmmakers who were making a film about the area's local cannibal tribes. Next up is Zombie Holocaust, aka Dr. Butcher MD. After Moluccan immigrants engage in a string of corpse mutilations at various New York City hospitals, a doctor and a morgue assistant travel to the Moluccan Islands to investigate. Next up, Joseph Ellison is Don't Go in the House. As a child, Donald was tormented by his mother who used fire as a punishment. Now, a deranged adult Donald stalks women at clubs, then takes them home where he kills them with a flamethrower. Next up, Contamination. A former astronaut helps a government agent and a police detective track the source of mysterious alien pod spores filled with lethal flesh-dissolving acid to a South American coffee plantation controlled by alien pod clones. Terror Train, a mass killer targets 6 college kids responsible for a prank gone wrong 3 years earlier and who are currently throwing a large New Year's Eve costume party aboard a moving train. Schizoid. An advice columnist in the midst of getting a divorce begins receiving threatening notes from an anonymous stalker. Meanwhile, members of her group therapy session are being murdered by an unknown assailant with scissors. Alright, halftime show's over. Let's get into my top 5. These videos are going to be very long, but I'm just trying to shout out as many movies as I can that I think are worth a watch. So, number 5 is 1980's Maniac. A psychotic man troubled by his childhood abuse is loose in New York City, and he kills young women and takes their scalps as trophies. This was directed by William Lustig and it stars Joe Spinell, and I think he gives a really good, unsettling performance. Tom Savini effects in this movie are great, and I love his cameo and his head explosion, one of the best head explosions ever. The mannequin imagery in the film is creepy as hell. Love all the sets in the film. And I love that this is a slasher that follows the killer, because you don't really get a whole lot of those in slasher movies. The movie carries just a very sleazy, nasty tone throughout, and it has a very 80s sounding score that I appreciate, and it has a Carrie moment at the very end that's surprising and very memorable. But one thing I do not care for in this movie is the end shot. It's just a cheap tactic that lots of movies do, where the person that you think is dead just opens their eyes and the movie ends. It's overdone, especially nowadays, and I don't like it. Next up is a movie that most people probably won't have on their top 10s, but I enjoyed this movie so much when I watched it. It's a Roger Corman produced film, I believe, and that is Humanoids from the Deep, aka Monster. They're not human, but they hunt human women, not for killing, but for mating. This movie was directed by Barbara Peters. It's directed by a woman. And this movie is about creatures raping women. And this movie also has the girl from the pool scene in Prowler. I don't know her name, but I saw her and I was like, that's the chick from the Prowler. And it has Vic Morrow. One of the highlights of this movie is the effects by Rob Bottin, the look of the humanoids, and just the gore and the chaotic third act when they're just unleashing havoc on this like festival and heads are being ripped off. It's just such a gory, fun time. It's the effects, the looks of these creatures are kind of cheesy, but that's just part of the charm. This movie is very rewatchable to me. The pacing just flies by. It's like an 80-minute movie at best. It's probably less than that. It just flies by so quickly. You got children that die in this movie. Like the first victim is a kid, and then dogs are getting killed. Like this movie doesn't care about that shit at all. It's killing everybody. Nobody is safe. But there are many fake outs, including a cat scare, and I'm not a fan of that shit at all. There's some day for night shooting, some bad editing here and there. It's not the best made movie, but it's very entertaining, like I said. The whole drama between Vic Morrow and the Native American character is really just filler to extend the runtime. One scene I gotta talk about though, real quick, is the ventriloquist scene. The guy, his dummy, as they're being attacked, his dummy starts screaming also with them. I thought that scene with the dummy was just hilarious. Oh, and that fight outside the bar, the whole fight fueled by racism because, Vic Morrow's character hates the Native American. That scene, the way that fight is choreographed and how that plays out and how it's shot, another hysterical thing. I was laughing my ass off watching this movie, and that's why it is my number 4. Next up is a Brian De Palma film, and that is Dressed to Kill. A mysterious, tall, blonde woman wearing sunglasses murders one of a psychiatrist's patients, and now she's after the prostitute who witnessed it. Alright, this movie is just damn near flawless. This could be number 1, but the 2 above it, I just have much more of a fun time watching. This movie, Brian De Palma knocks it out of the park. I love his style, the camera work in this movie. It's just amazing. The storytelling, the writing, it's just a very cleverly written movie with a plot twist that a lot of people probably didn't see coming back in the day, but because of Blu-ray, I could tell who the killer was. It wasn't really that much of a twist to me, but I'm not going to knock the film for it. This has a really good cast and great acting, some nail-biting tension. The third act with the whole shower scene, I thought that was a really great scene. Just lots of great direction by Brian De Palma. There's clearly an influence from Psycho and Halloween on film when you're watching this. It's a bit more leisurely paced, but the script just draws you in. I was engaged throughout, and the characters were well written and well fleshed out enough. Like, I understood their motivations, and I was just 100% on board. One thing I will say, though, is that the ending 10 minutes I didn't think were necessary. Like, there was a moment where I thought that the film should have ended, but it went on an extra 10 minutes that I don't think were really that necessary. And shout out to Paul B. He said that this was his favorite movie from 1980. Number 2 is a film by Kevin Connor, and that is Motel Hell. This movie is about Farmer Vincent, who kidnaps unsuspecting travelers and is burying them in his garden. Unfortunately for his victims, they are not dead. He feeds his victims to prepare them for his roadside stand. Now, this movie has Nancy Parsons from Porky's, the Porky's trilogy, which I just saw for the first time recently. Great comedy trilogy by Bob Clark. Check those movies out as well if you're into comedies. And I love Ida and Farmer Vincent. Just their chemistry together. I just love them as a brother and sister, crazy family, just taking people and burying them in the backyard, and just their methods, how they go about, cooking them, like what they do. Oh my God, it's bonkers, it's wild. It's got so many silly things in it, and that's what I look for. Like, that's the shit that appeals to me most. It's just fun, silly horror movies. Horror comedies are my thing. And I love that this movie is not just trying to, like, go for broke, like, try to be, like, as slapsticky and dumb as possible. It's not trying to be a stupid movie. It is actually kind of taking itself serious at times, and I love that. I love the fact that this movie actually is taking itself serious, but it's very silly. I really dig the wild premise of the movie, the whole basically Psycho meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre, running the hotel, but also kidnapping people and cooking them for the locals. And I also love a movie with like lots of quirky, fun, memorable characters. You got a cop in here who's basically like Harvey Weinstein one moment, and even though he basically tried to rape this girl, he ends up getting that girl in the end. And then you got these two hypocritical like pastors who are, they live double lives. They're perverts and shit. And the sounds of the victims, when they cut their like their vocal cords, the sounds they make are actually kind of eerie. Not too many people talk about it, so check out Motel Hell. And shout out to Nate Malice, who said that this was his favorite movie from 1980. All right, 5 honorable mentions. Let's do this very quick. Number 5 will be Alligator. This has Robert Forster and the guy from The Cuckoo's Nest, and I love that this movie has a high body count, practical effects, the alligator, the way it looks, the way it's shot. It's just very cheesy. This movie is just fun. It's very hard to come by, too. There's not a Blu-ray out there that I'm aware of, but this movie actually has some gore in it, and kids are dying on screen. So you know how much I like that. But yeah, there's a shoehorned love interest in the movie that I didn't really care for, but overall, it was a fun movie with some quirky characters and some silly moments. Next up is Dario Argento's Inferno. This is the sequel to Suspiria, and this movie, the biggest thing that I really like about this movie was the look of it. This movie is eye candy, all the blues, the reds, the pinks. It's just gorgeous to look at. There's a couple of cool, stylish kills in the movie. Very incredible atmosphere and set designs. It's dripping with atmosphere. But this movie does have some plot conveniences. It's a little hard to follow. There's not really much of a story going on, but yet it's still kind of hard to follow, like all the different characters and what's going on. And it's too long. I think this movie just overstays its welcome to me. In the ending, the finale, it just kind of peters out. Like it's not really much of a grandiose third act. But two moments that do stand out in this movie is the dozen cat scare. Like literally a dozen cats jump at this woman. Usually in horror it's one cat, but in this movie it's a dozen cats jumping at this woman at once. And then you got the prick who's drowning a bag of cats, and then some hot dog stand guy just comes by and starts butchering him when you think he's going to help him out. That cracked me up. Next honorable mention will go to New Year's Eve. I love the plot of this movie. I love that this guy is just going to kill people after each time zone hits midnight. Like that premise, it's perfect for the holiday. And I love the performance by the main actor in the movie. He's just got a charm to him. Like he's very smart, and I like that his plan doesn't actually like work out the way he wants it to. Like he's not perfect. He makes mistakes and he like improvises on the spot. And he's got a really funny motive. He just hates his ex-wife, and he hates women. He's like, I can hear your heart beating. I don't like that. Now for the things I don't care about as much is the main actress in the movie. I don't think she's a very likable character, or you can't sympathize with her at all. She's not a fighter, and I think she was a miscast. The movie cuts way too much to like the party. It has a bunch of party montages and cutting to the sun going cuckoo in the apartment above. Way too much of that crap. The ending's a bit silly, not really needed. And the kills are kind of lame. This movie doesn't have gore or creative kills in it. Again, this ending is kind of anticlimactic, and the twist, if you can call it that, was very obvious to me, so that was kind of a bummer. But yeah, still enjoyed it way more the second time I saw this, so New Year's Evil, check it out. Next up is Fade to Black. Now, this is a Irwin Yablans production, the guy who made Halloween, and you even see a Halloween and a tourist trap poster in the movie, which I liked, and I love the main character in this movie. He is just fantastic. Loved his performance, and I just really feel like this guy is me. Like this guy is quoting movies. He's a movie fanatic. He's just constantly watching films and just studying them. He looks into the behind the scenes. He knows the actors and the directors. He just lives out the movies. Like I love the premise. This movie is basically a commentary on violence on TV and the influence that it has on people, or could have on people. It's got a cool soundtrack as well, and the kills, although not gory, they're very funny to me and they're memorable. I don't care for the police investigation, all that stuff in the movie. It wasn't intriguing or engaging to me. They should have had Tom Atkins play the main cop in the movie. Maybe it would have been more fun for me. And some of the characters are a little too over the top. I mean, how angry they are, and the dialogue, like the crazy aunt and the bitch fucking boss, the way he treats, the main character here, Eric. Just those two characters were a little too much for me. I did notice some bad editing here and there, and the writing overall is a bit weak and convenient. Things just serving the plot, but a very enjoyable watch. I'm so glad that this was recommended, and highly recommend checking it out. Last honorable mention will be The Changeling. George C. Scott, he is great in this movie. It's a slow burn, it's more leisurely paced, so that's why I didn't make my top 10. And, I mean, this movie, especially compared to movies nowadays, it's just more standard, run-of-the-mill, like haunted house movie. It couldn't make my top 10 because of what kind of movie it is. Like, I don't gravitate towards this genre, the haunted house movies. It's kind of like Stir of Echoes, the plot, but it's not a bad movie. It's just not one that I enjoy as much. That's why it couldn't make my top 10, but George C. Scott, he is great in this movie, and the atmosphere of this one setting location, I love the setting, the atmosphere of it, the score, the piano score, and it makes sense because he's a piano professor, so I like that, it kind of goes with his profession, the score. There's no jump scares. The scares of the movie are more subtle. They're not, in your face. But number one, my personal favorite, even though it's not the best made movie, I don't care. It's the most nostalgic. It's the one I've seen so many times I can quote. so many lines. That is Sean Cunningham's Friday the 13th. Camp counselors are stalked and murdered by an unknown assailant while trying to reopen a summer camp that was the site of a child's drowning many years ago. This movie is number one, not only because I love it so much, but it's also, to me, in a very, very important slasher movie. Like, this was the start of the modern, at the time, slasher formula. Without this movie, who knows how many other slasher movies would have been like it after. Like, this movie just kicked open the door for more slasher movies. Like, after this, they just came pouring out. So it's a very influential film, so to speak, although Halloween influenced this movie, but this movie influenced other films to me. This movie has Savini gore effects and a slit throat, the decapitation, the arrow through the neck, the start of Kevin Bacon's career. This is like the first movie he ever did. The kills are memorable. Half of them are off camera, so that's a shame. But the ones that are on camera are not only memorable, but they're creative and fantastic. I love the POV killer the whole time. I love that this is really one of the only movies in history that I know of where it's a whodunit and the killer reveal is somebody who you were never introduced to properly, like at all. Betsy Palmer as Pamela Voorhees is fantastic. I just adore her slightly over the top performance at the end. And she is more intimidating to me than Jason in Friday the 13th Part 2. Like, I prefer her. She's just so frightening and psychotic, and this movie has the best ending jump scare of all time. It's one of the best memorable jump scare endings ever put to film. And Harry Manfredini's score is so damn iconic. It is a big piece of this movie and why it works so much. It really builds suspense. It's reminiscent of Psycho at times. I just absolutely love that. As well, some things I don't care for in this movie is Alice as a final girl. The characters are a bit bland. One note, you don't really know them that much. This is not a movie that's going to have character development. And yeah, so Alice, she's a weak final girl, and half the deaths are off camera, like I said. And it is a cop-out ending where the killer reveal is somebody who you've never seen before. So I love that and don't like that at the same time. If you want to hear my full thoughts on this film, you can go check out my review and my review for the whole series. I reviewed them all, ranked them, and ranked almost everything I could about the franchise because it's my second favorite franchise of all time behind Child's Play. So there you go, number one, Friday the 13th. Now it's time for me to go watch a bunch of 1981 horror movies, which is a stellar year, fantastic movies. So let me know in the comments below what is your number one or top 10. Let me know all your favorite movies from 1980 are and why. And also, let me know what your favorite 1981 movie is. And if I put that movie on my list in my next ranking video, I'll give you a shout out, just like I did in this video for some people. So there you go. Let me know in the comments below all that stuff. And thank you so much for joining me tonight. If you like what you've seen, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And until next time, Auf Wiedersehen.